The Writer's Dossier podcast is a proud member of the Authors on the Air Global Radio Network.
Woo! No writers were harmed in the production of this podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Writer's Dossier. Thanks for joining us today because I know I always say this, it's a special episode, but this is genuinely a first two-time Emmy-winning Joe Battaglia is on the show. Joe, thanks for joining us today at the Writer's Dossier.
Hey, Jeff, thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to this.
Absolutely, dude. You are awesome. And everyone needs to get on board and get to know you, your background, and what you've done with this. We were talking before we hit record, and there's a really cool connection between your background, which is TV journalism, and I want everyone to hear you talk about that, and the character in your book. And everyone, if you haven't discovered Beneath the Rings, now is the time. I mean, man, it's that time of year. We got Olympic fever, we got Cortina. And Joe, I want everyone to know a little bit about your background. So like I said, folks, two-time Emmy award-winning guy here on the dossier. We've never had that before. So tell us a little bit about that, and then I want to hear about the book.
Yeah, so I was a creative writer, like right from my young age. I remember writing a short story when I was like 10 or 11. My mom just like uncovered it in the attic a couple months ago. Just a preposterous story about the mob taking over the Vatican. Who's thinking of that at 10, 11 years old? But I won some writing scholarships when I was in high school and wound up working for the Newark Star Ledger newspaper in New Jersey when I was 18. Started really young, just kind of like a stringer. We would take game scores and stuff over the phone. And then about a year after, starting that, I got a couple beats of my own, covering girls volleyball, swimming, boys volleyball. And I did that for a long time. I did that for 13 years. And when I sensed that the newspaper business was struggling to monetize digital, I was like, I don't like where this is going. It's time probably for a change. And I was fortunate that my dad knew a guy that was in business development at NBC and got me an interview with the content team. And in 2007, I got hired to be a desk editor really for NBCOlympics.com. I wasn't set to go to the Olympics at all. I was going to be like part of the, just the team that stays back in Stanford. And in November of 2007, they had the men's marathon trials in New York City the day before the New York City Marathon. I was in early and I was the guy on the desk that day. And one of the runners, Ryan Shea, unfortunately passed away from a cardiac incident during the race. And as you can imagine, when something like that happens, like all hell breaks loose. And I was literally the guy, like, managing that breaking news story from our office at Stanford, like fielding all the info coming to us from TV guys in New York and our Olympic researchers that were on the ground. That night, Dave Gobble, who is the coordinating producer for NBCOlympics.com, called me into his office and he said, "Hey, we don't have a track and field producer for Beijing yet. Do you want that job?" And I said, absolutely. I mean, I knew that was my ticket to China. I knew they were only bringing, the producers from the four big sports: track, swimming, gymnastics, beach volleyball. So that was my start. And just an unfortunate tragedy, easy happenstance that happened in that race. If that does not happen, I don't know that, like, we're sitting here talking, about Emmys and covering 4 Olympics.
Well, holy cow. I think I spy with my little eye in the corner behind your left shoulders, one of the Emmys, one of the two. A lot of it's being in the right place at the right time, but you put yourself there. And just to answer your question, I wasn't really a question, more of an accusation. We've established the fact that you started your fiction career at a newspaper. Okay, great. And then 2, who would think of the mob taking over the Vatican? I don't know, a guy from Jersey.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe.
So you're from Jersey. We've had some folks on here. Just shout outs to Melanie and Aganos from Patterson. Greg Podolsky, author of The Recruiter from New Jersey, J.M. Adams, author of Second Term from New Jersey. We got a bunch of New Jersey people in the Writer's Dossier, so welcome. You're among friends here in the Writer's Dossier. So
Maybe it should be the writer's state and not the garden state. Like, I don't know.
hey, forget about it. So Beneath the Rings. Wow. Man, tell us about that. The whole story, not the whole story, but like how the parallels are so cool. And I'm going through this book and I'm reading it, and I had the pleasure of attending an Olympic event. I was in Korea. We got tickets to the Olympics. It was fantastic. Absolutely loved it. And then a few years ago, I was in Cortina in northern Italy. I used to live a few hours away, but I never went up there. But on this one trip, spent a couple days up there. It's fantastic, and you totally get Olympic fever. I've been through Innsbruck and I've seen the rings there, and then the big downhill. So you wrote a book about that, but you made it a thriller. So you've got something really special here. You've taken a really cool topic and your special background and put that in the book. Tell us how you did that and what's going on with your main character, Nova.
Yeah, so I knew when I sat down to write Beneath the Rings that I wanted to set it in that Olympic world. I mean, that was the time of my life professionally, and it's what I've spent like almost 2 decades, covering. So I knew that was that was going to be my setting. So I wanted, to set like a high stakes political thriller. It's set at the 2040 Olympics. I wanted to make it in the future, but not so much in the future that like, you don't know what a cell phone looks like, or it's like, like something out of the Jetsons, right? Like
the Jetsons Olympics.
The Jetsons
Olympics,
right? And I said it in Qatar and Doha. I had the fortune of going there 3 times for track and field events, and just have sort of fallen in love with the setting. It's got like this real old world, kind of Arabic part of town against this like glitzy downtown, Corniche water area that they've built that's super modern. It's a really cool setting, and if you ever get to go there, like it's wonderful.
It's quite a dichotomy.
Yeah, for sure. Doha is always, I mean, they've hosted the World Cup. I mean, they're bidding for Olympics, so who's to say they don't end up with the 2040 Olympics? I mean,
there you go.
Ball, who knows? So these games are the first ever held in the Middle East. I wanted a strong feminine character. So the protagonist is a journalist named Nova Mendelsohn, born in Newark, New Jersey. So I tied it back to those Jersey roots, and she's kind of a sharp, no nonsense Olympic insider. I wanted her to be an independent journalist, so she's not really tied to something like an NBC or a New York Times, where like you might have some restraints on like what you can report on. She's independent; she can write whatever she wants, and I kind of modeled that after a friend of mine, Alan Abrahamson, who was our columnist at NBC Olympics, but has and he's worked for the LA Times, but he has a great website called 3 Wire Sports, where he's like deep into the political side of the Olympic movement, and also covers events like swimming, track, all the big happenings. So that was a little bit of a nod to Alan, and so she stumbles onto this nightmare in the story where 12 athletes, 6 Lebanese, 6 Israelis, are kidnapped by a terrorist organization. I hearken that back to 72 in Munich a little bit. So they're kidnapped in this brazen midnight raid. And this group puts a $500 billion ransom on returning these athletes. And they start releasing some ancient vendetta kind of clues to Nova. And it's at that point where she kind of stops being a reporter, going to her like 14th Olympics, and turns into a detective, and really starts using her journalistic instincts, to kind of unravel this plot before the conspiracy unravels, and celebration turns to catastrophe.
And then you did a really good job with that transition, because you can't just take, movies do it, books do it. You take a clerk in a store with no experience, and then all of a sudden they're running down the street with Gene Hackman getting chased by the NSA. It's a little too much of a leap, but with the journalists, they're naturally inquisitive. They're good at observing, and they take notes and they remember things and they put things together and they want to get to the end of a story. It's a really nice mesh of a combination of the two. You did a really good job of that. The other compliment I'll pay you is with my background, being in the military and being around people with guns. You did a really good job at the beginning with the action scenes, which again, this is not necessarily your background. You don't have that yeah, like a lot of people, write from that space, the Mark Greenies and or the Brad Taylors and those guys. But you did good, and you didn't try to overdo it, but you still gave us enough to where we knew what was going on. So, folks, I'm here with Joe Battaglia, author of Beneath the Rings. Two-time Emmy-winning journalist, covered the Olympics. He's been everywhere, seen some really crazy stuff, and this book is really done well. Let me ask you a question: who came up with the chapter and the other artwork that's in like the beginnings of the chapter and some of the Arabic artwork? Who was that, your
Yeah,
idea, or how that happened?
So those are things I worked with my team at Franklin Publishers on. Robbie Reyes kind of ran point on that team on the cover design. We discussed, the setting being Doha and wanting to have browns in the cover and black and red. And, they came up with that, kind of like Sherlock Holmes looking silhouette and little different pieces of the, from the story, like kind of interwoven in there. And I mean, the minute they showed that to me, I was like, all right, we got the winner there. And then some of the internal art with like those kind of Arabic looking arches, I kind of wanted that design, and it was my idea to call the chapters veils instead of chapters, and like just like kind of opening the next next curtain in the story. And I thought that was a maybe a little bit of a different way to approach it rather than just chapter one.
Right, and I get that, but that little extra helped me, and I think everyone else would really enjoy it. Help put you in that setting, because it's not like we're just we're in the scene of Justified, or I get Central Kentucky, yeah, but this is something completely different. Not a lot of people have been to Doha, and so that whole all of the senses, focus in on that, folks. You're gonna enjoy Beneath the Rings by Joe Battaglia. Definitely check this out. It came out last year, so it's out now. Go to Amazon. So let's talk a little bit about character here. And the writer's dossier doesn't go in super deep in these kinds of conversations usually, because we want to keep it about you and the story. But your character, Will Mendelsohn, that's a cool name. Tell us a little bit about why you wrote her the way you did, and I'm also curious why you chose to make her female.
I think, to answer the last question first, I wanted to make Nova Mendelsohn, the protagonist in Beneath the Rings, because I feel like there maybe aren't a lot of thrillers, or in particularly sports thrillers, where your main character is going to be a strong female character, right? I wanted that unique element to this story. I felt like, if I was modeling, like I said, the character after Alan Abrahamson, I think it would have been too close of a tie making him male. Okay. I mean, I wanted that nod to my boy Alan, but like I didn't want to rewrite Alan, right? The other thing I wanted to do was bring in some of these tough, gritty elements and journalistic elements of people that female journalists that I admire, right? I think you look at Lara Logan, right, and what she went through in Egypt, right? Nova, kind of gets messed up in this book, right? And I wanted somebody that can personify that grit. And then, you look at, historical figures for tenacity like Nellie Bly or Ida Tarbell, and draw inspiration there. And then, just, other, pioneering women's, journalists, Helena Elliott from the LA Times, and, what she's done for hockey coverage, and, Leslie Visser, and, people like that. And if you can get an amalgamation of like all of those people into like a character and make it work, like, I think, I think you've accomplished something. I mean, that's maybe the proudest thing I am about of this book is like how that character like develops and carries through the, from page 1 to page 422.
No, absolutely. It's a different character in a different kind of setting, and that's what readers look for. I think they're looking for something familiar but different. And you take all those people that you just mentioned and put them together. What would it be? Noble Mendelsohn, and check that out. So, so no Bob Costas. I mean that guy, right? I mean he's just an ass clown, right? I mean you're not going to write about him. So
No, again, like, I mean, I've met Bob, but I don't know Bob, right? Like, I mean, we know the Bob that we see on camera and like
right.
about it, right? Alan I've known for, over a decade, right? Like, I'm, really close with him. He was very easy to, pinpoint as a source of inspiration.
Do you think about sending a copy to any of these real life people and saying, "Hey, hey, how about a blurb?" Or, "Hey, what do you think of this book?" What's the feedback been like for you on this?
The feedback's been positive. Alan has his copy. He's got his signed copy. He was one of the first ones that I sent out once I got it. There've been
tell everybody who you're talking about with Alan.
Alan Abrahamson from Three Wire Sports. He's also a professor at USC.
His information is going to be in the show notes. Definitely.
Yeah, so he's a good friend, and he's written 2 books himself. He's written biography of Michael Phelps and Apollo Ono. So like he's kind of been in this writing world as well for a long time.
Definitely.
And another person that like was really helpful to me in my process was Sarah Crouch. She's a USA Today bestseller. She wrote Middle Tide. She just had her new book come out this month called The Briars. She was a runner before she was a writer, and I knew her from covering marathons and I just picked her brain at one point, like once I was getting close to finishing the manuscript, and she was gracious enough to say like, "Hey, send me what you got and I'll give it a read." And
wow,
she really helped me in my direction. I was kind of starting to mix genres a little bit too much. I was a little bit like thriller and a little bit too much gore. And she's like, "Look, there are markets for both of this, right? Yeah. Like you need to decide, what you want this book to be." And my first chapter was too jam-packed, and like she's like, "You want to get everything out. I understand you want to get everything out like first." Yeah. And she's like, "Your flow is off. You like gotta fine-tune a couple things." And she gave me like so much great advice, like like really unsolicited. I was picking her brain just about like the publishing process, and she was like, "Hey, send me your stuff." So this book wouldn't have happened probably without that input. So she was another one that got a signed book like right away. She was one of the but I think Alan's and hers went out at the same time.
Fantastic. Well, that's so clever, and that's actually a good example for some of the writers who watch the podcast on YouTube or listen to it on Spotify or Apple. Go out and just ask people for help, ask for advice, ask for direction, and chances are they'll help you out and give it to you. So we're glad that you got that direction and advice, because you did do some really good stuff there, especially what you're talking about at the beginning with your pacing right up front and getting it out of the way without jamming it up, but getting it out. And so it's easier to follow along. And folks, Joe's an inspiration to all of you writers. This is your debut novel, Franklin Publishers. It's out now, Beneath the Rings. Congratulations on a really fun, good read, because it's so different and it's realistic, and you bring a lot to the table. We just can't wait to know what's next. What you got cooking for us?
Yeah, I've been working a lot just like on the publicity of this book.
Sure.
I mean, my dream is getting this adapted for a big screen.
Yes.
Or series. So definitely going to be working on that. I leave the book open. Like there's possibility that like there could be a second book and turn this into a series. So that's there. And those are all things that are kind of bouncing around my mind right now. But I'm really hyper focused on getting the word out on Beneath the Rings and seeing what avenues I can go down for a screenplay.
Well, trust me, it's out now. Once it hits the airways here in the Writer's Dossier, our giant audience, they're all going to flock. So we're going to help promote this out. And folks, how do people get a hold of you? We're going to put it in the show notes, but website and your best social media handle. What do you got?
So my website is booksbybattaglia.com. You can find a lot of good stuff there. I've written a lot of blog posts that kind of expand on the characters. So again, like not bogging the book down with like too much backstory. If you want some backstory on those characters, it's all there.
It's all there. Awesome.
There's some bonus content there for you.
Nice.
The book is available, anywhere you can buy books online, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all that stuff. My best socials are Facebook. It's Joe-Battaglia1. And then you can find me on Instagram and an X at Joe Battaglia 75.
Standing. Like again, everyone look for that detail in the show notes. We'll get it out there for you. And we're so glad we discovered you. Joe, thanks for joining us and congratulations on all that you've done and everything you got going on in the future. So good luck with that. Let's stay in touch and cover what you got going on in the future. But now people just go and get this book and you'll understand what I mean. So thanks again, Joe.
So much, Jeff. I really appreciate it. Great talking to you. And I hope everyone gets Beneath the Rings.
I know, me too. Congratulations. All right. Thanks. Bye, everybody.
The Writer's Dossier is brought to you by Myopic Duplicity, a crime thriller anthology from Leonardo Audio that asks, do the ends ever justify the means? Get just a few stories in and you'll find out that sometimes the clearest vision hides the darkest lies. Myopic Duplicity is available now with hair-raising stories from award-winning author Rob Hart, Edgar winner Aaron Flanagan, Georgia Writer of the Year Christopher Swan, two-time Derringer winner C.W. Blackwell, and the amazing Matt Phillips, Mindy Carlson, C.B. Bernard, Wes Brown, Eric Beatner, Ash Clifton, Libby Cudmore, Victor Deonda, Terrence McCauley, M.E. Proctor, C. Matthew Smith, and Tony Wirt. Get Myopic Duplicity from LeonardoAudio.com or at thewritersdossier.com and find out for yourself. Do the ends ever justify the means? The Dossier Podcast is a production of The Idea Academy.